I thought this week I'd share a presentation that I gave at our local ties conference in December called Engagement as Information Prosumers. And this session was really more about asking questions and opening dialogue. And so there's a lot of ideas in here that are brought up to be intentionally to be provocative, but to be provocative to serve a purpose of addressing issues of equity and what is right in our schools, and really questioning what our current policies are with respect to technology and our students. So this will be an abridged version, and in the actual presentation, I rely a lot on audience participation and conversation. And so for this video, I will basically just be presenting the presentation portions of this. So we've been told a story. I think this is a story that is going to be familiar to most people about the internet and about Web 2.0. And so this is basically how that story goes. For years, we were largely passive consumers of information and media, and this media that we consumed was largely controlled by a very small number of large organizations. We had our broadcasters, our networks, very powerful groups with lots of money, and in Western culture, that was funded mostly with business. So we would have, our television was free, but it was supported by ads paid for by companies. And so we were basically, for a long time, reliant solely on these large corporations or these large entities to pass information on to us where we consumed it. So we relied on major media news outlets for our news, our newspapers, our magazines, our television programs. This was something that we weren't necessarily an active participant in creating, but we were active consumers of that information. And even when the internet first started, this was largely true. And we had barriers in the beginning of the internet of technical knowledge of how do you publish something online. There was a relatively small percentage of the population that knew how to do that, or had access to do that. And so even in the beginning of the internet, time when we consider Web 1.0, we were very much a consumer-driven, information consumers, and not so much producers. And so then along comes Web 2.0, and we know that from the .com crash, the websites or web companies that survived were ones that relied on user-generated content. So like Amazon relies a lot on the user reviews to drive its sales, whereas Pets.com was basically just an online version of our regular physical store or storefront, and that led to its decline because it didn't utilize the ability to interact. And so what the story goes is, now that we have this Web 2.0, it's a read-write web, that we are now users of the internet are now content producers and consumers. And so we have this concept of the revolution will not be televised. It will be on the internet, and it's going to be democratic. And these issues are really relevant in today's political discourse as well when we talk about things like net neutrality. But that's not the focus of this presentation necessarily. So the way the story goes is the internet and Web 2.0 democratized information. So before I challenge that story or that storyline, let's consider some of the power of these tools. So Web 2.0, social media and networks that are created by or by these tools are rather powerful. So, for instance, I posted this comment one day, and so I basically asking people on my Twitter network to tell people I was talking to or presenting to where they're from and what impact this has on students. And I think this has actually now become a fairly cliche thing to do. Everyone has done this to demonstrate the power of this tool. And quite frankly, we're seeing less and less of it. But anyway, within an hour, I had these responses, and so we had people from all over the place chiming in and answering that question. So these tools allow us to create and publish to a global audience. We're now producing information. We are the content of our our ability to affect others is exponential with these tools. And messages can spread rather quickly. So it doesn't take very long for a message or a link or a video or any content online to spread to everybody in the world. You just look at a lot of those viral videos. So for instance, we have here a video that went viral a number of years ago. And if we look over here at how many views it has, that's astronomical. I mean, how many television programs can we say have been viewed by roughly 47 million people? And I would guess rather few. So this poses a number of questions. So what responsibilities do students have using these powerful tools? What responsibilities do teachers have? And what responsibilities does school have? To add to this, or to add fuel to this discussion, so where's the line between being a responsible protective measure and being educationally negligent? It's pretty clear, I think, that that these tools are becoming more and more powerful, and they're driving things in our economy. They're driving politics. They're driving information, and who has control or access to control really is or understanding of how to manipulate that information environment will have an advantage over anybody else. So are the tools you need to have access to teach digital citizenship skills available to you at school? Are you even allowed to teach students how to responsibly publish work online, and is that a problem? In many schools we have really strict filtration policies that prevent a lot of this stuff from happening. So if it is important for our kids to know how to responsibly use the internet, and the internet is increasingly becoming this social web or this read-write platform, is it a problem that we don't allow them to have this as something that they experience at school? So let's take a detour from the storyline here. I'm going to talk about something called the production gap. So and this is just also food for thought. This is a quote by Woodrow Wilson. We want one class to have a liberal education. We want another class, a very much larger class of necessity, to forego the privilege of a liberal education and fit themselves to a specific, to perform specific difficult manual tasks. And I think at that time this was something that was more explicitly stated, but still largely there's still largely a section of our population that believes this, and perhaps a large section of people have an underlying belief that this is probably true, and that's something I would very much like to challenge, and it's something that we quite frankly should wrestle with as we pursue into any policy discussion in the future is, do we want to create equal opportunity or equal equality for our students, and what does that mean? What does it mean to have equality? And is equal fair? Is equal giving two people the same access, or are there more complicated factors involved? So there's two studies I'd like to point you to. One is a study by Schrady in 2009. Another one's by Trotter in 2008. And these are, to the best of what I've found, to be the most relevant studies on a new phenomenon known as the production gap, or the new digital divide. And so what Schrady found were that studies have shown that schools with higher poverty levels place more restrictions on the internet. And what Trotter found was that these same studies have shown, and they did reference the same studies in these two, a lot of the same studies in these two articles, have shown students at more wealthy schools are more likely to engage in content creation for school assignments. So, so that combined, this becomes a question of pedagogy as well as access. So another quote from Schrady I'd like to throw out here is drawing on national surveys of 39,000 people from 2000-2008, I find that even among people who are online, a class-based digital production gap exists. Consistent control over digital tools and a cultural context to use the internet mediates the difference between college and high school educated Americans and whether or not they create online content. And then another source to look at to explore this issue is S. Craig Watkins' The Young and the Digital, which was a book published last year. And in that book he finds that social inequalities still matter in the physical world. And as we are learning, they also matter in the virtual world. Nowhere is this clearer than in the rise and use of social networking sites. So I'm not going to include this in this little presentation, but I will put a link to it in the description. This is a collage of I think very thought-provoking quotes from various sources, mostly from Digital Nation, which was a PBS documentary that came out last year, but also from a few other prominent names in the field of education and technology. That really challenged this question of what exactly we're talking about here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this now and end part one here, and in the links below I'll have a link to part two as well as a link to this video. So that's the end of part one.